Hi, Chris. Hi, Monica.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
How's it going?
It's going. It's going. No digital background today, huh?
No digital background at the office today. Just finished a court hearing. Fortunately, I did not have any objection from the other attorney or the judge to stop at 2:30, which was generous. And we're going to pick up later on in time. Client doing a remote hearing from Atascadero State Hospital. So ends that world, come into this world. It's all blended to a certain extent. How's the day been going for each of you?
Yeah, it's pretty packed here too. Like 3 meetings in a day. Thursdays are always filled with meetings for us.
I'm seeing an adorable little one there in the corner.
Yeah, you have a little assistant in the background.
Yeah, she refused to leave the office here.
You don't want to miss anything for sure.
Yeah, she claims to be working as well, so we'll see.
I'm a big help, I'm sure. Yeah. How about you, Chris?
Oh man, it's a lot of meetings. A lot of meetings today. Good meetings, but a lot of them. Glad I was able to get some lunch in there somewhere.
Good. Good. That is important.
And I just hope that we have quorum today. Honestly, I haven't really polled the members for this particular meeting. I know that Edward pretty much stopped participating, last month.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
All right. Maintaining.
Getting through.
Yep.
Yeah. Did Edward say specifically that he would not want to do future, or it was just kind of trailed off?
I think since his membership didn't really get renewed, so he pretty much just didn't really want to participate anymore. Although I told him that he's still technically a member until the end of this year, but I don't think he's planning to participate anymore at this point. And I know Tammy is not renewing as well, so I don't know if she. I haven't really checked with her, for the remainder of this year, but I don't know if she'll participate. Same thing goes for Jay Levine. He's not renewing, so I think we have the most members leaving for this subcommittee.
We're going to need to have max turnout on the others. We need to have like really good percentages for everybody else. So we'll do what we can and everything. There's a lot of competing, and seems like everyone on this call, if we share nothing else, it's that we've been doing many remote meetings recently. Well, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, Ronell, but I have a feeling you've also had some Zoom meetings in your recent past. I hope not, for your sake. But, flipping the perspective, I have the opportunity to participate in these calls, which is good, so.
All a matter of perspective, right?
It is. It is. Here we are taking time to talk about issues. I want it to be part of the discussion for the county, so imperfect as it may be. Is that Dr. Hernandez? Hi. And
hi, how are you?
Ms. Harris? I'm well, thank you. Welcome. We're just talking about competing demands that everyone is dealing with, and hopeful that we will reach a quorum. So that's building. And in the meantime, you're very welcome to be here. Glad you're here.
Thank you. How many more people are we expecting? A few?
Well, yes, a few at least. So some additional hoping subcommittee members.
Oh, yeah.
Ronell is here with me now.
Okay.
And as well, hopefully we'll have some additional community members.
Yay.
Monica, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
So there's another jurisdiction that I'm working in a different state, in a different region of the country, who are trying to form a sort of similar county-based sort of collaborative setting. And I talked to them about, having like an open application process for it, as opposed to people making recommendations, like systems folks making recommendations about who participates. They're into the idea, but they're looking for a template or a model to use. And I if I'm not mistaken, the application information is like publicly available on like the county website, but I wanted to ask if that, if that's something that you'd be okay with, other folks looking at for that purpose. Is it something where we should try to redact some things, or, just how comfortable are you with potentially sharing like a sample sort of application, like the applications folks would have done to apply to the RJOB with another jurisdiction?
I'll just interject and say welcome to those who are joining. Go ahead.
Yes. So as far as the application, Chris, the application form actually is kind of, my understanding is just the template that they use for all the advisory bodies. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jill. I know the clerk of the board has sort of a generic application form on their website that all of various kinds of boards and commissions can use. And unlike for CAB, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Committee Advisory Board on Public Safety Realignment, ORJ actually designed a specific application form, like a 5-pager. Pretty much the first page states the purpose of the CAB, what the qualifications, eligibility, and like commitment as far as how many subcommittees we have, how often we meet, information like that, so people know the purpose, and the requirement for participation, and then we let them state their experience, knowledge, anything like that. We even leave a confidential page that if they feel they want to only share certain sensitive information on that page, we'll keep that confidentiality and then only release information to those who make the decision as far as appointment. So that's pretty much a more specific one we designed for another body, but this particular RJOB we use the generic one. And I guess my other question would be, if you were talking about this other jurisdiction, they're trying to put together such a body, they may be interested to, like, for example, review how the RJOB is put together in the first place. Because we have some ex officio member designations, and then we have committee representatives, and then we have like a 9 and 9, so it's kind of an equal voice. So I don't know which step they're in right now, but they may want to take a look at the model here, right? How we put that together, and even RJTF, which was actually before my time here with this county, but like how that effort was put together to actually create such a a body to move forward. And then as far as application, I'm sure we're happy to share any templates that they're interested to take a look at.
Let me just check in and to say that those who are here, we're just having a little preliminary conversation as we're building toward our quorum, which is necessary to take any official action. So that was just having a little bit of conversation as we're all getting together about possibility of developing in another county. So it wasn't really subject specific to Contra Costa. And I see that we are building. So welcome to those who are here. I think my thought is that we will really hold off on introductions and other action until we reach quorum. Hopefully we will hit that point and then be able to move forward in terms of content.
Jeff, we have quorum now.
Oh, we do? Fabulous.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone. Welcome to our subcommittee meeting. And you'll see in the chat there, the link will include the ability to download the agenda if you don't have it before you. And that'll be, I think it's the most recent in time. If you're looking at that agenda list, we're at the top of the list. On the right-hand side, there's a little download button. You should be able to open up the agenda, and that'll have a guideline of what we intend to cover. I will then just say before let's see. I have this here before. We do go around and introduce ourselves. I wanted to just make sure as you're having the content in front of you that you'll see there is a list of what we're intending to take action on the first page of our packet, and then moving down below, a review of what had happened before at our most recent meeting, and maybe perhaps even before I go through that, why don't we go around? We have small enough of a group and just take, let's say, 30 seconds. I'm trying to think in a way that we can do honor to introducing ourselves and how we've come to the meeting, but really leaving any content in terms of one's comments or what we hope to bring in terms of what we'll discuss until we reach the content of the agenda itself. So Jeff Landau, I'm with the Racial Justice Coalition of Contra Costa County, I'm steering committee member. And I'm also a public defender, although I'm not sitting here in that as a representative of that office. That's my employment background. And let me turn then to Stephanie Medley, if I may.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for being late. For some reason, the Zoom link doesn't work for me on this meeting, so I had to try to figure things out.
Thanks for working it out.
Yeah. And I'm Stephanie Medley with RISE and a committee member. Is that it? Was there anything else?
Yeah, for this moment, that's perfect. And let me turn it over then to Marcus Walton.
Good afternoon, everyone. Marcus Walton, Communications Director with the Contra Costa County Office of Education, representing Superintendent of Schools Lynn Mackey on the subcommittee. She does sit on the oversight body, and I represent her in this meeting.
Welcome. If I can turn to Ronell, is this a good moment? I don't know if you're still handling two things at this same second.
Yeah, so basically, Ronell Ellis, Health Right 360 representative, and I'm slightly distracted because I have a client that I have something I have to do and take care of him. So I'm multitasking, so I apologize for that, but I'll have him off the line shortly, so I'll be focused up. So thank you, guys.
No worries. Thank you for providing service in the community. It's important.
Yeah, it's kind of tough.
Yeah, well, understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I can turn to Cheryl Sudduth.
Hola, Cheryl Sudduth, steering committee member for Racial Justice Coalition and a member of the Oversight body, and I just attend all of these subcommittees just because.
Because you care, I know it.
Because I can and I care. And actually I have to leave today a little early, around 4. So, but I'm gonna stay as long as I can. Thanks.
Glad you're with us. Thank you, Cheryl. Let me turn to Chris James, if I can.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris James. I am a site manager for the W. Haywood Burns Institute, which is a national nonprofit based in Oakland, focused on justice transformation, particularly around race equity in justice systems on a local jurisdiction level. I think that covers it.
That does. That's great. Thank you, Chris. How about Monica? Can I turn to you?
Yes, I'm Monica Carlisle. I'm the Senior Program Analyst with the Office of Reentry and Justice, now under the Probation Department. And our office staff, the Racial Justice Oversight Body, and its 3 subcommittees.
Thanks, Monica. Let me then turn to Carol Burton. I'm so glad that you're here, and we'll be having a little bit more of an introduction as you're on our agenda, but if you maybe take a moment now to just briefly say hi to the group.
Hello, I'm happy to be here. I'm Carol Burton. I'm the CEO and founder of Jewel Legacy Group. We provide a range of capacity building supports and services for governmental organizations, institutions, and CBOs. We have developed a particular methodology that ensures that governments and their contracted partners are working together to improve the responses for people who are most marginalized and the folks that they're charged to serve. So thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So glad that you're here. Let me then turn to Dr. Hernandez.
Hi, my name is Dr. Michelle Hernandez. I'm a clinical psychologist here in Contra Costa County, and I've worked with a lot of people, a lot of foster youth in the system, and trying to get back into, being productive and focus on people with different disabilities, both apparent and non-apparent. And I think that's an aspect that people often overlook and could be taken into consideration more. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Glad that you're here. How about Jill Ray?
Hi there, Jill Ray with Supervisor Candace Anderson's office.
Hi, Jill. How about Jumana Harris? Ms. Harris?
Hi, I'm Jemana Harris. I am an intern with Jewel Legacy Group and also a graduate student at Indiana University studying philanthropic studies.
Welcome. How about Meg Keeley?
Yeah, hi, I'm Meg Healy. I'm currently a member of SURGE, and I spent about 15 years of my career working with adjudicated youth in the Philadelphia area. So, and more recently, I'm working with the Interfaith Council. We're developing a mentoring program for reentering youth. So you're going to see me hanging out in a lot of these rooms that intersect because I'm really trying to get up to speed and informed so I know what's going on in the county and how we can really help these young people as they leave juvenile hall.
Great, thank you. Glad that you're here. Let me turn to Eddie Chacon.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Good afternoon. My name is Eddie Chacon. I'm a youth justice advocate in Contra Costa County.
Welcome, glad that you're here. Summer Jackson.
I don't think Summer has her mic on. Summer is a program manager with Jewel Legacy Group.
Welcome, Ms. Jackson. You'll be able to, as soon as that gets sorted out, please just jump in and you can introduce yourself to the group. Glad that you're here. And Melvin Russell. We're just going around introducing.
Good afternoon, Melvin Russell. I'm the Assistant Chief Probation Officer.
Welcome. Have we reached everyone? I don't want to skip any person. I think that we have each had at least a brief moment. So great. Let me take a moment with the finally kind of orientation. This has been part of the kind of newer method that I'm trying to approach here, or we are, in having a little bit of background in terms of what is this group, how did we get together before we move forward with what the work is. And I think that just comes as my experiences advocate in different spaces and not really knowing, wait, what's going on here? How did these people get here and what's the agenda and all that? So I'll say that this group, the subcommittee that you're participating in now, this smaller work group, is part of the larger, and I should say this is the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee of the Racial Justice Oversight Body. And the Racial Justice Oversight Body is really phase 2 of a larger process in Contra Costa County that started off with the Racial Justice Task Force. Very similar model in the sense of community members, system stakeholders coming together, discussing ways in which to address racial disparities, inequities in the system in Contra Costa County, how to address those things, reach consensus on a number of things after much discussion and participation, facilitation, and some voting, reaching a series of recommendations on specific points, providing those to the Board of Supervisors, the Board of Supervisors approving recommendations from that group, and then empowering this oversight body that we're participating in now to implement. Carol, was there something that you wanted to mention? I just saw your screen for just a second. Okay, no problem. Sometimes I just follow this little light indicator, and so that's it. So I'll say that we're in phase 2, and this group is taking on a portion of what have been the recommendations from that earlier task force. We're not taking on everything, and it was part of the discussion that we had at the very beginning of this oversight body group, but we're going to need to prioritize certain number of these. I think it was 17 that ultimately were approved, and we can't run with each of these at lead. Some of them will have to be taken as lead, and there are different subcommittees: diversion, data, and also community engagement and funding. So thrilled that you're here. I'll say that we are trying to have as much robust opportunity for community engagement as possible. I'll note that the public comment is really inviting for you to be touching on things, even if they are on the agenda, so long as it's not giving you a double chance to talk. I've also had sometimes an opportunity. I've gone to a meeting. I only have an hour. I can't be there the entire time, but I do want to talk about something that's later on the agenda. Sure, take your 2 minutes or so to speak on the point to make sure that you're heard and can have this addressed. But if it's going to be later on the agenda and you're here for that, please do reserve your comments for that time out of respect of our presenter, the other comments, content that we have on the agenda, so that we can hit everything. So that's just a really small slice of the background here, but just talking about what are we taking on and how did we get here. And with that, I'll maybe just finally say on what I want to say here is I think that this really matters. The work that we do, it's incremental, but you're on the public record in all of this, right? We're building the county's path toward action that needs to happen. And I think there have been steps that have come a long time. If you haven't yet seen, and there was a draft of that we reviewed from that Chris had prepared, a review of the work that we've done in the last year, and that was presented at the most recent RJOB meeting. It just kind of is an overview of what's happened recently, and I think is encouraging, at least from my perspective, of how we can move forward, why it makes sense to continue moving forward. So that's as much time as I think makes sense to devote to orientation. Let me turn to number 2 on our agenda, public comment, and invite anyone who wishes to, if you're able to, either raise your hand through the Zoom function if you know how to do that and you're comfortable doing that, probably easiest way. And if not, if you would just wave your hand, indicate that you want to speak, that works too. And I'll also encourage folks, when not speaking, to mute oneself, even though we always run the risk of starting to talk and then someone saying you're not muted. But okay, I'll mute myself and invite anyone to speak in public comment if they wish to. Uncomfortable silence is part of Zoom. And if there's nothing at this time, that's just fine. There'll be opportunity to discuss on everything that's moving forward. I don't want anyone to feel like, well, I was just about to say it and I missed it. It's okay. You still can. If there's something that you feel like you want to speak on, that's just fine. And there will be opportunity, of course, through the agenda moving forward. Okay. So that brings us to item 3 on the agenda, which is to approve the record of actions from October 8th, 2020. And if I'm scrolling down in our agenda packet, that would bring us to page 4 of 124. I need to give appreciation to Monica Carlisle for putting this together in such a short span of time, dealing with, I'm sure many people similar to myself who are getting things pretty last minute to the deadline and put this all together, which is terrific. And I'll just invite folks here to review pages 4 and 5 from our current agenda packet, which will cover what had been done, said. If there's any addition, correction, notes that anyone wants to say, I invite you to at this time. I can also say, as a younger person, I always hated this portion of the meeting where we're going over the minutes from last time. I was like, what a waste of time. But it does matter moving forward, again, building the case as we're on the path to longer term. Okay, anything that people feel like they want to have a modification? I'm not seeing anything. I'll also note that we have video recordings of these meetings, that at least in the short term, as we have these remote video meetings, that those are recorded as well. So if there's something that you wanted to capture, again, you can find that through the county's website, subject to change if we get back to in person sometime in the near future. But at present, that's currently available online. So I would need a motion to take action on the prior minutes or the record of actions.
Motion to approve the record of action.
Thank you, Stephanie. The second?
Second, Marcus.
Thank you, Marcus. Any discussion on this item? All right, then I think, seeing nothing, would call a vote on the item.
Yes, and I'll do the roll call. Jeff Landau,
Aye, yes.
Ronell Ellis,
Aye.
Stephanie Metley,
Yes.
Marcus Walton.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And I know hopefully that wasn't too painful for people who felt like my previous position. Why are we doing this? Okay, moving ahead. Now we're going to item 4 and finally have a little bit more opportunity to hear from Carol Burton, who's joining us, giving some expertise, background on what could be, at least we can learn from local models, that there are programs operating, that Alameda County is doing work that is in certainly the same sphere of what we are proposing with respect to capacity fund, the community capacity fund. And while we might not be able to have all aspects, may find portions of the work that's going on in Alameda County may not always apply to what's going on here, but we can certainly learn, and we're on the path of exploring what is possible here. So excited to hear a little bit more about what that work is that Jewel Legacy Group is doing, and I give the opportunity. I think perhaps if it's fair to budget 30 minutes or so for presentation. If you wish to have more than that, that's fine. And if you have less than that planned, not a worry at all. But I don't think we had discussed previously expectations, but there's flexibility there. This meeting goes until 5 o'clock. So let me just turn it over to you then. And thank you, Ms. Burton.
So thank you for inviting me. It certainly is something I enjoy talking about. And so I should say before I get started, I do have another meeting at the top of the hour. So in 2014, 2015, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, one of their supervisors in particular, felt that it was important to carve out a portion of the AB 109 dollars to support the internal capacity of community-based organizations to ultimately serve the criminal justice population. He specifically was also very concerned that they would be able to create systems where they could collect meaningful outcomes and really talk about the impact of their work on the outcomes for the men and women under correctional supervision and that were returning home from the county jails and also state prisons. Unbeknownst to me, when this conversation was happening, I was home actually in Michigan, where I'm originally from, taking care of my father. But I had just recently started my company and really thought about a model that would address everything that I knew about the community-based organizations that I've been working with over the years. That would address some of their ongoing concerns. And so I had the conversation with Supervisor Carson about my dream, and he said, "Oh, by the way, we have $9 million. And we've set that aside. We haven't decided what we're going to do with it." And so that's how it started. You mentioned something that happened in Alameda County. This was particularly, although we believe the principles are applicable to all CBOs and government agencies, it is really something that needs to be customized for your county. There are unique needs for each one of the regions across the Bay Area and across California, and for that matter, across the state across the country. But there are some core principles and core things that are common to CBOs in terms of things that become ongoing challenges, things that prevent organizations from moving from stable to sustainable to thriving organizations. And those things are common whether you live in Southwest Texas or whether you're in Northern California. So what we did was we worked with an organization very similar to a group that's very similar to something that I heard you talk about today. I took the model to our community advisory board, which is a partner and a service attached to the AB 109 dollars. And they developed a sub-work group who worked with Jewel Legacy and our consultants over the course of about 4 or 5 months. We held listening sessions. We went back and incorporated what we heard, came back to the work group, did more work, and then took it back out for listening sessions. So it really did become really uniquely something that was about the needs of Alameda County. So the documents that you have in your deck, the first one is the blueprint. The first one is the blueprint that was the final product of what I created, what the CAB helped kind of massage and refine, and then what we heard back from the community. So that blueprint is the result of that. You can see that on some of those pages, it's pretty granular. They wanted to be transparent with every penny of the $9 million. And so you'll see that the budget is pretty granular, but it gave a blueprint that was ultimately passed by the CCP-EC. And then it went inside of the department. In this case, it was probation to develop an RFQ or an RFP. And you'll see that the RFP did not follow our instructions to the T, but it did lift up 2 different points. There were 2 separate RFPs, one for a planning grant and another for implementation. So those are the second and the third document that's in your package. And the idea is that organizations would have a very low threshold, and you can even see the application in that first packet that says planning grants. You know, it's 1 or 2 pages, low threshold. Tell us a few things about yourself. And it was designed to help people, give people a break to kind of sit back and reflect on their organizational health. Many of the leaders who are running nonprofits are doing the work. They're doing direct service themselves. You know, they're worried about cash flow. They are making things happen. And so what this was designed to do is to encourage them to, okay, let's take a break. Let's back up. Let's think about the health of our organizations. Let's work with some experts in the field who will work with you over time to do an assessment, and then to take that assessment and put it into a plan. And for organizations who decided to do that, who applied and that were accepted in the planning phases, they were given $5,000 for their time. And we weren't interested, then the county wasn't interested in how they used that $5,000. But in our minds, it was a compensation for taking away from something else. If you're not running the organization and doing the kind of the things that it takes to get those deliverables for the contracts, then it's taken away. So they were given $5,000. And that could have been it. They could have walked away and said, thank you, we have a plan, and thank you for the $5,000, and we're on our way. But if you were interested in the next phase, you could go to the next phase, which was to take that capacity building plan and roll it into the next application RFP that you'll see in the package, which is the implementation RFP. And they could take that plan and write a proposal around that plan, including a budget, because when we help them develop the capacity building plans, we help them kind of think about the cost. Now, not everything that came up in their plan was put forward. We asked them to prioritize 2 to 3 activities that they wanted to focus on. And we went through a process of helping them think through, if you were to do this thing and this thing, it would really get you further along. And the other 2 things could come later on. So we help them prioritize and kind of think about in terms of sequence, what should happen first and second and third. And so those applications went through an RFP process, which is a little more rigorous. And they had tiers of dollar amounts that they were going to fund. So I believe it was 100,000, 200,000, and a few even received over $300,000. And so those were to implement what was in their capacity building plan. It could pay for hiring a development director. It could pay for some of the directors, the AD's executive director's time to go and finish a leadership course. It could pay for bringing someone out to train in evidence-based practices. It could pay for information management systems. It was pretty flexible about what those dollars could pay for. And we also helped them identify consultants if needing a consultant to come on. But they continued to work with the consultants that were assigned to the project throughout, but they could also hire additional consultants. So the last packet you see, by the way, let me stop for a second and say that went on for 2 rounds. So you'll see implementation 1, planning 1, planning 2. You'll see planning implementation 1 and implementation 2. So both of those things went on for 2 rounds. The idea is that they wanted to make sure that more organizations, diverse organizations, participated in this, and that everyone had an opportunity. So the last thing is that there were 2 TA providers, consulting firms identified to provide the technical assistance. And so what you have in the packet happens to be Jewel Legacy's final report. We were one of the TA providers. We were also the designer of the project. And so if you look on page 12 of that the last document, it starts to talk to you about the lessons learned from the overall project. So you'll see that there were about 7 themes. And then we actually went into some of the challenges. And so those things could very well be where you start in terms of lessons learned if you decide to take this up. So I'll pause there. I've been talking about 10, 12 minutes now. So see if there are any questions, and then I can keep going.
Terrific. Thank you. As Ms. Burton is saying, just invite anyone if, same way we were talking before, raising hand or unmuting through, or just waving your hand, one way or the other. Well, I know I have lots of questions, but I'm going to wait until the end, and finding this very fascinating, but not seeing anything in this moment. Or Steph, was that a hand? No. Okay, we're good. Then I'll hand it back to you, Carol.
Okay. Well, actually, the only thing I would say in retrospect, in the early days of designing this model, we felt that it was important that capacity building services are, people really don't understand what that means in most, it's kind of, is it this, is it that? So what we hope, what we later refined is that we hope people understand that this is really not a transaction. I do this and you do this and you get this, but it really is transformational, that the way that we work together with whether it's a government organization or a grassroots organization is in partnership, so that at the end we have really left them with a set of skills that will last and that they will be able to take with them irregardless of whether we continue to work with them or not. And so it really is leaving a set of transformational skills and resources inside the organization, and they're able to do that work for themselves. The second thing I would say is that the capacity building support should be viewed as something that happens over time. When an organization is at maybe a fragile stage, or they would consider themselves financially fragile, the kinds of supports they need at that point are very different than if they've managed to be stable. And so I know many organizations who still have financial problems, but they will be around for the next 5 and 10 years or more. So, you know, when you move to that stable stage, there are different kinds of things that you need to be able to move to the next stage, which is really much more about sustainable. And the organizations that thrive are the organizations that, you know, philanthropy and others go to and say, listen, help me think about this. And so some organizations are very interested in being that thriving organization. Some are like, we're just doers. We want to be right here, but we don't want to have to worry about money. You know, just let us do the work. And so we help them understand where they want to be, and then develop their own plan and blueprint to get there. So I'll turn it back to you, and I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you again. So there's a lot for us to reflect on there. Let me, again, just open to the group to ask if there are any comments, questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Carol. I think I missed the initial 5,000. What exactly was that for the groups?
We called it a mini grant. It was really a mini grant. And the mini grant was designed to, it was just a payment. They could decide how they wanted to use it. The probation wasn't tracking that. It was really an incentive to get people to focus on their organizational health. So that was the first piece. The second piece, those larger pots of money were specifically for the things that were prescriptive in their capacity building plan.
Okay, got it. And then how many orgs actually participated in this?
Well, over the course of our time, I can tell you how many we served. We served 74 organizations, and they are many of them are listed in that report. But I would probably say that the entire project was 130, 140. We had more than half of them served by our company. Yeah, and so the ranges of if you kind of think about 9 million being split in lots of different ways, the ranges of the grants for the implementation phase were very different. You know, they had 3 different buckets.
Ronell, please.
Yeah, I was just I did see that at one time, and I was and this was initially for existing agencies, correct?
For Alameda County, no, it was not. They only needed to be interested in serving the.
Yeah, I was that's where I was slightly confused. I should have asked someone, but I was interested in finding out were those funds allocated for agencies that want to start up as well as agencies that were already existing. And so that clarified that too. So now I know in retrospect.
That's a good question. And Alameda County, 501(c)(3). This could run through your fiscal sponsor for the 5,000 and for the next phase. Yeah, so you did not have to. Some people in their capacity building plan had in their plan that they wanted to establish their own 501(c). So it did not have to be a capacity building program. And I wonder if you are confusing, not confusing, if I am confusing this with a really small capacity building project that Contra Costa County had. There was initially no resources attached to it, but in the end, we were able to provide up to $8,000 for CBOs.
Actually, literally having to repeat the textbook definition of inadmissible hearsay.
Other questions from the group before I start jumping in with mine?
Well, maybe if you start, you'll stimulate.
Oh, there's Marcus first, please.
I had a question. Just so I'm trying to go through the project outcomes, et cetera here, and I am. I guess this is from 2016. I assume, has there been another evaluation done in the interim?
So the program is no longer in operation.
Okay.
The funds have been exhausted. I did understand last year that there was going to be an overall evaluation of the entire project. I am not sure where probation is with that. It is what we found is that it's difficult to do evaluation after the project is over. So you want to build those things in from the beginning. And so what we try to do is give them as much substantial information as we could about our projects. But the overall evaluation, I can't tell you where that is. I do know that sometime early last year, there was an RFP that went out, but we haven't heard anything about the overall evaluation.
Okay. My second question, I know there was some definite desire to make sure that organizations who may not have the traditional bona fides, right? Who may not have the same kind of track record, or the traditional nonprofits that have staff and have a long, usually get these types of grants. And we want to make sure that there's opportunities for other organizations who may be new but have a definite connection to the community, are eligible for these types of funds. And I'm not in Alameda County, but of the 22, the 46 or so agencies that are the grantees that were assigned to your group to, I guess, evaluate, how many of them would you say were sort of newer, maybe non-traditional nonprofits? Were you able were those types of agencies and organizations able to participate?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually looking at the entire packet. I could go through and tell you. I would say, just off the top of my head, the planning grants, there were many more organizations that were non-traditional that received that $5,000. Some of them were, many of them were just did not currently have a contract with the county, and were probably more likely not to with some support. I think with the planning grants, you did see more organizations who did not have. I guess that is really the evaluation. How many of them had only one contract with the county, and years later, 3-4 years later, now have several. So that is the work. I'm actually trying to look at my list. I can tell you how many of them were non-traditional. The other thing I wanted to say while I'm looking at that, I find that I can't multitask anymore for some reason. So if you look on page 16, at the time, I would say of the 22 for Appendix 1, Cohort 1, I would say probably 7 or 8 of them had never had any contract, and probably another 5 included in that had only had one contract and was very small.
Well, I guess with it, excuse me, I don't mean to step on you, but would that also include maybe those who have not had contracts with other agencies or other organizations as well? Whether it's a different county or larger nonprofits.
That was not the consideration at that point. You asked really good questions. I can tell you about another project I worked on where I looked at a county agency and how many of we just interviewed online survey. And so we did ask that question. How many of you only have a contract with this agency? And how many of you have a contract with more than one county agency? And tell us the names of those agencies. So, we got better at understanding that some people can be really reliant on one agency only and only have contracts there. Some organizations, have multiple contracts, and they're able to navigate all of that. One thing I did learn too is that our goal was really it's really that helping people not just be able to contract with the probation department or in Contra Costa or in Alameda County. It's helping them to be able to do whatever they want to do. And so they're building their capacity. So if they want to apply to a foundation, they have that. They have the tools to take the tool is applicable to whoever the funder is. If they're going to corporate America, they're going to a private donor, they still have the information and the resources, the narrative, the plan to be able to be funded through several other organizations or funding sources. But your point is well taken, that we should include that as a measurement in the beginning.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Excellent. We're getting a level of detail that's really helping us assess how we can move forward. Maybe I could just jump in with, I'm wondering if there was discussion of issues related to having services specifically addressing youth population. And part of, I think, perhaps what we may be addressing with the community capacity funds that we have in mind is, will this be related to services that are adult focused specifically? Will it be some of it that might be targeted or designated specifically for addressing youth population? If that was something that was part of the design process that was with this?
We did not specify adult or juvenile. You'll find that many of the organizations in this report, 2016, did serve juveniles. It was AB 109 was still being understood and implemented in various ways early back then. And so, I think that there was some thought that, as long as it wanted to serve the realigned population, they were interested in that, or they were interested in improving their services, that there was no specificity around that.
Okay. And maybe I can just follow up on, I know that you touch on it in the documents that are here, and there's a lot of content, which is fabulous. The outreach process initially, making sure that community is aware of this and that there's a sense of credibility with everyone, that the word went out here, everyone had an opportunity to know about this. It wasn't just targeted to these folks who were already on the list-ish kind of thing. So how is that navigated if you're able to? And I'm also sensitive to you're having a meeting coming soon.
So because this was a community-driven process, and the Community Advisory Board was involved in it, the CAB, people were brought along as it went through refinement. So the blueprint, people were waiting, and they were spreading the word about it. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And so that's one way to do it. There was a runway and there was an opportunity to really get the word out, come in and give your input about what this would look like. And so that really does enhance stakeholder engagement and awareness, and some announcements about it. Since then, right now we have several capacity building contracts where they've asked us to go out and find people for them. And so what we're doing is creating a massive list of people who would never be on anybody's list, because they don't currently have a contract. They may be working in East County somewhere at a church in a basement. But those are the folks we're looking for. And that some of that's word of mouth, some of that's just knowing who the people are, who know the people are, who know the people. But it's also going to the people that are being served and benefited, and asking them, who out there is doing this work? Who would you really prefer to work with if you had your choice? And who would that be? So, one thing I would say is that we were really open to partnerships too, that people could collaborate, that there are many ways to deliver your services and to meet the needs of clients. And so sometimes several loosely organized groups got together and worked together on a particular contract. So that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, it's the type of real investment and engagement that you need to build the credibility and say that there's that real outreach. So that helps us have an illustration in real experience. Let me just invite maybe final questions if anyone has at this time before we transition to our next item. And anyone?
So Jeff, is the goal that we not actually have a thorough discussion now on this, but wait till another meeting to have a thorough discussion as a group?
Well, I think perhaps what we could try to do is continue our discussion in terms of application to Contra Costa County. I think there probably is still more that we can have together, and understanding, respecting Carol's time that you have another meeting coming. Of course, you're welcome to be here for any portion that remains, but knowing that if you do have to step to that other meeting, understand that also. But right, I'd be happy to talk further about what this information might further our discussions here and continue on with our agenda. Is that?
Yeah, just real quick. And do we have another meeting scheduled before the end of the year?
Well, I think we can take a moment to talk about that now, but it seems to me that it would be good to meet on December 10. It's right before like the deadline of nothing happens now. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good because I do think we need to have a longer discussion about this. If we could take that meeting to think this through a little bit more, maybe throw out some ideas because some things have popped up, I think, from Carol's presentation, which I really appreciate. And I would like more time to read through the material. Yeah. But a couple of things that I'm thinking of, especially when we're thinking about how we engage with the community, since we are community engagement, but thinking about what it could look like to potentially do a listening session with some CBOs to get their voices in the room around what is it that they're looking for actually to build capacity, to utilize that information to craft RFPs and things like that and help to build this out. And then also thinking about how we're leveraging other information that's being collected from some of the other advisory groups from around the county for like who's even out there. So those are just a couple of things that are popping up, but I do think that we should dedicate some significant time to really starting to build this out.
Agreed. Yes. Let's have it on the agenda and have that as a significant portion and give ourselves more time to incorporate what we've just heard and our learning as we're going through these materials. So I think that that's good, and we can continue now if there's more that we want to talk at this moment. But and also next time having a significant portion devoted to.
I wanted to say that I'm going to be en route, but I can call back in about 5 minutes if you're still talking about this, I'll stay on. But if not, feel free to reach out with any questions. Monica has my contact information.
Thank you again, Carol.
Thank you.
Well, maybe just to stay on this thread as we still are, that I mean, my thought is that we're shaping this process, right? We're gently moving forward as we have continued conversations. I want to make sure, at least from my perspective, that each of these meetings that we have, we're getting closer toward whatever the project is. And that doesn't mean that it should be fully baked, but also that there's some action that comes from. So, I mean, we've talked about different models before. We talked about Alameda could be one. We talked about hybrid. There's the value of having cohorts concept to a certain extent, and then also having flexibility as needed. Shaping, getting toward. We've just heard from Carol on the model that's there. And my mind is going toward, well, what if we talk about having a two-phase thing? That's not yet saying we're adopting any particular model, but it is talking about like, well, this is a little bit more structured, and the structure could be not final, but kind of, again, shaping without deciding. Perhaps there would be this initial less of a hurdle thing that's open to more people, less risk of the amount, even if it's not 5,000, it's some amount that allows people to have it useful for their time. And maybe we could get a similar thing that it would be unrestricted, or maybe there would be some limited restrictions. But basically serving a broader audience or broader need of individuals, and then a smaller group for a bigger amount. We're not yet deciding what those amounts are, but that's the kind of thing I'm thinking we might take from something like this if we like those ideas, and saying, well, group discussed this. It seems to us perhaps this two-tiered thing would be appropriate, and we're shaping that, which would ultimately be brought back to the RJOB, and in turn would make recommendations to the Board of Stoops. What are people thinking as I'm talking out loud? Thinking out loud, talking out loud.
I think that would probably be, pretty effective. If you listen to, how when Carol was talking about that specific thing, she posited that it was probably pretty effective in terms of providing an incentive for people to participate, right? So I think just in terms of, helping not only to spread the word, right? Because if there's money on the line, word probably travels a little faster, but also for people to actually figure that there's something in this for them, and to take it seriously is something that they may want to try to be involved in. I think something like that with the 2 tiers, so that people are more or less guaranteed some bit of help, I think could go a long way.
Maybe I can also just pepper in here to, like, I could get more educated on the reference that Carol said, well, perhaps there was this other project that had been in the county that was up to 7,000. I don't think I know the full history of what that was and what that would mean in relation to what we would do here.
My understanding, the one that Carol mentioned, was mostly focused on AB 109 funded CBOs, actually through the Office of Reentry and Justice. As some of you may know, that we do have like a sub account of the AB 109 dollars that's actually called the Innovation Fund, Local Innovation Fund. And we went out with RFP a few years back, and then the capacity building program was one of the ones got awarded, and Jewel, with Carol, actually won the award for that. And they did, fairly small, we utilized fairly small amount of dollars from that innovation fund. And we did some micro grants as well for up to like $45,000, if I remember correctly. And actually, we didn't really utilize every penny of that, and due to some agencies just weren't able to, follow through in participating in the program. That's my understanding. So, but again, it's kind of limited to those agencies that are already funded. Definitely not, 60 of them for sure. So it's just like a few, and mostly they're already serving the adult reentry population. That's pretty much, in a nutshell, my understanding of that. And I guess that's also one of my questions at this point, is to figure out like what our job and JJCC is trying to do, in like to what scale, the program that we're trying to design now will serve, right? We're definitely not limiting to AB 109 for sure, but like to what extent we're going to expand the program to help more agencies, especially those that are not traditional, contractors with the county, and maybe smaller, not, agencies as well. I guess that's one of my questions. Since what Carol described for Alameda County sort of happened already in Contra Costa on a much smaller scale. That's my understanding. After hearing, what she talked about with Alameda. And especially, we also involved our CAB in Contra Costa in when we defined the program utilizing the specific innovation sub-account under the AB 109 dollars. So I think as far as the funding source, the purpose, were similar between Contra Costa and Alameda, but definitely Alameda had a much more money, many more organizations got involved than what we did here in Contra Costa. And Jill, if you know anything more about that, feel free to chime in. That's just my recollection.
That's really helpful to have that background.
I think it was only about 3 to 5 organizations that participated in that.
Yeah, very limited number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I know that was specific to AB 109. Our focus, because we are looking at both youth and adult with our job, then we need to make sure that it's going to be open to both youth and adult serving organizations.
Agreed. And to kind of have that intentionally spelled out to make it clear that that's the case. And I think, my perspective would be that the really exciting part of this, and kind of inferring that from some of the questions too, is that if we can reach groups that are not already kind of actors, that are known actors, that are already providing the services in the current system of receiving funds, and those groups that are not already on the radar, that seems like that isn't already what had been attempted and could be presented to the bigger group and to ultimately the supervisors as really something new, a different approach than had been before. So I would want to really invest in that portion of trying to build capacity of folks that are not at all or are very minimally connected to the funding streams, that is. What do people think on that?
I think that's something it's important for us to think about. And I have no idea like what that would look like if it's thinking about wording. I think we have some time, but if it's thinking about wording it in a way where like if you're a smaller agency with this many employees, then this is the pool of money that could be available to you. But I definitely think that like one of our focuses should be on building the capacity of some of those smaller agencies. And for some of the more established agencies, it may look a little different. Have no idea what that could look like, but it may look a little different as far as what because there's going to be different levels of capacity building as well. So it's not saying that just because you're a larger agency that you don't have any capacity building needs either.
Yeah, and right, as Carol was talking about at these different stages, the different needs that are there to carry forward the work. So that is, I don't want to lose sight of the various needs to be able to best meet the demand in the county. Marcus, I saw you on mute.
I guess, and Stephanie, this might sort of tie into what you're saying. Is there some ability to partner some organizations together that are doing some of the same type of work to utilize the expertise that maybe some of the more established organizations have, while giving maybe the folks who don't have some of the traditional skill sets that it takes to sort of navigate through the bureaucracy, if you will, maybe that'll give them, a little more experience doing that. They can, and so maybe that's something, and maybe Ronell, you can talk to that if that's something that would be appealing. I don't know. Maybe that's something that you don't want to do. Maybe there's a reason that they've started their own. They don't want to go through those traditional organizations, but maybe if we can, some of the bigger, more established can sort of help do that work and in this process. So anyway, just an idea.
No, I agree with what you're saying. There's different strokes for different agencies, right? Not necessarily different folks here, but different agencies. I I know in our agency right now, we're capacity building and we're trying to add an AOD counselor and also a psychologist on board, right, in-house, right? So here we are sometimes outsourcing a lot of our resources, and there is a lot that we do, and sometimes other agencies are at capacity, right? So some agencies need the capacity build for that reason, so we could take some pressure off maybe the the office that we refer everybody to for psychological evaluations. We can do some of that in-house with our own network of our population, and they'll be more familiar with the people that we serve in-house, as opposed to getting outsourced from all the different agencies. And then you have the psychologist department over there in Concord running around trying to serve all the needs within the whole entire county, because they serve East and West, and we serve just East. So maybe some of the agencies can do some of that. That would be a good form of capacity building within the organization, to say, what resources do we use in the county that are already existing, however, may be, bulging at the seams with their work, right? And how can we take some of the pressure off them and use them as needed, as opposed to every time we need a referral. So, and if we bring on maybe one person on board, because although I have extensive knowledge in AOD services, I have degrees, but I don't have my certification because all of the times I've served in that capacity, I didn't need it. So this is new stuff as far as getting certification. So the AOD counselor we're trying to bring on board, and also the psychologist, I think will serve in a great way. And I think other agencies should start looking at that too. Just because you have resources in the county doesn't mean you should stop trying to add or build onto what you already have, and just using those resources that, are somewhat available to us. And sometimes that's the way to stunt our growth and not think about what we can add to our own agencies, because there may be something else out there. I think that's what I'm thinking. And because we're already doing that, we're already in the process of doing those things, I think we want to encourage other agencies to take a look at that as well. At least examine, like we all said, like Carol said before, a time to really take a look at what we're really doing as an agency, all agencies, and how can we, build on what our own existing foundations, because most of what we're all doing is great, but I'm sure we can all agree we all can do better somehow, some way, and get creative as well. So there's been a lot of funds that I've seen with capacity building, and also innovative, right? Those innovative funds that have been out there, I thought were really, really cool, but I don't know how many agencies took advantage of them and how many agencies really understood the power in that to be creative in the organizations and continue to grow, not just exist, but like I think somebody said, it might have been Still Carol, about thriving, thriving as well. So I think all of this builds that thriving and builds encouragement for our agencies to examine what we already have and how can we add to it. So Marcus, I think, what you were saying was spot on, and generate that stimulation in all of us as agencies to say, it's a lot of movement right now, especially with COVID and all the other things, and the AB 109 and the realignment, and CDC and reentry, and money bail, and new regime at the federal level, and a lot of movement in other areas too. So I think we all need to be shaking things up, and trying to find out what we're made of on that end as far as innovative and creativity in all our agencies.
Thank you, Ronell. I think when you're talking about the application and the environment there, that health right about what if we brought something in-house and what could be the benefits of that is kind of making through the example, understanding like how this can actually work. And that was going to be one of my follow-up questions probably in presentation, would just be like, hearing narratives of like, what does this look like for folks in practice? How has that helped? And, as you're talking about what could be the benefit for health, right? That's the sort of education perhaps that for newer groups could see, yeah, I see how this could actually help me and help us reach our capacity. I certainly was thinking myself of bringing on, when we brought on social workers in our office, what that meant for us. So, right, I think that'll resonate with folks and building from the experience that we have here. Yeah, Ronell, please.
Yeah, to add to that, Jeff, that new position that the district, the public defender's office added with the person going around and trying to serve that population. It was just one job, I think it was, but I thought that was pretty cool to have somebody designated, right, to work as a liaison between juvenile. It was a little different with juvenile mixed in with adult, but I thought that was great because the defenders, we know what their job is. It's basically, to just do everything they can. But when you have at least some, release valves that can assist you in those efforts with communicating and connecting with the clients or the participants that are involved, I think it helps, take pressure off some of the, like the public defenders and stuff like that, and gives sounding boards to those who are involved in the justice system, and they feel like they can be heard and they have somebody they can contact above and beyond the person that's working for them in court. So things like that. And it's just a matter of like, hey, what can we do? Or maybe, like you say, listening to those who are involved in the justice system. What are you guys looking for? What do you think would be helpful? And then trying to implement that. Similar to what Karen was saying, there's the hey, getting the attention, here's some money, think about some stuff. And then there's other money that's saying, how can we implement what you just thought about? So I think all of that together, put it all in one burrito, and it makes for a good recipe. So I just want to also mention that because I know that was pretty fresh. I think it was 2019 or 2020 even that got brought to the table.
Yeah, I'm glad to say that it's expanded in our office social work efforts. That Angeline is still here, and we have a new social worker, Kenitha Washington, with mental health diversion, and a couple interns that are also here. So building to meet, what is the demand is even greater for sure than what we can do, but it's steps in the right direction. So right, we're seeing this theme in different ways, how that can build for service providers in all across the county, whether they're community-based orgs or some of them being even the government orgs like us. So we've made development in our, I think, like at least discussion here, not finalizing things, but kind of talking about a general concept of maybe a stage 1, stage 2, but not defining it. Perhaps my thought would be, our notes of this are that we discussed these issues. We talked about the merits of potential systems and agreed with Stephanie's proposal that we return in early December for our next meeting and have some further discussion and perhaps a decision on an initial structure proposal that we would make.
And I think it would be a good idea. Speaking for myself, like I said, I haven't had a chance to go through everything in that packet. And so it may be good for folks to kind of just go through it and maybe be ready to kind of pick out some highlights that maybe you like from that. Yes, homework.
Yeah.
To kind of help structure it. And I don't know if it also may be good to have some type of structure in how we're even discussing the topic so that we can move through it fairly swiftly.
Yeah, good idea. Before we move to our next item of agenda, perhaps I would flag, based on what I was hearing in this meeting, if we were going to look at, let's see, pages 119 and 119 through 122, I think it was, of the 124 packet. So if you're looking at our huge agenda packet, at the very end, Carol was saying, lessons learned, right? She's like, these are the kind of nuggets here. So that would be, of course, I want to look at all of these pages, and I'll just take responsibility for when Monica was saying, do you want to include all this? I was like, let's just attach everything because I want to have it, which is true. And also it can sometimes get lost, some of the detail there, salient points, but she pointed to these. So I'm going to go through those again as just flagging among other issues, but to kind of maybe frame our discussion. Right. I was also going to propose that perhaps there can be a small work group assisted sort of thing. We had between last session and this session, assistance with ORJ and Burns, and talking about how could we kind of move this forward between meetings without running afoul of any of our requirements with Brown Act. And maybe there's something like that, as you're saying, Steph, it would be probably helpful to have some sort of framework or structure for us to talk about this and not just kind of amorphous. And that would maybe require a little intra planning session between now and the next. So maybe I can talk offline with Monica and Chris about the possibility of that with all sorts of other demands. Right, maybe not to be finalized in this moment, or yeah, okay, I like it. I won't take that as any commitment, but I thumbs up. I welcome it and accept. It's great. I see it. Homework, fantastic. Okay, so knowing that we're coming back and the plan is to do work between now and then, is there more to be said on this now with that in mind? Okay, let's then, not hearing anything in this minute, let's move ahead to our next item on the agenda, which is talking about the Youth Advisory Council planning update. I think, being maybe permitting or whatever, flexible with that last agenda item taking a lot of time, because I think we have a little bit less to provide an update here. So knowing that, wow, we just ate up a lot of our agenda time, I think likely that's going to be all right in the sense of there needs to be more done on this point. And we had known when we were last here, which was our October meeting, that there were, specifically with our hopes to engage youth leaders and youth leadership organizations, that there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of demands. Let's not try to imagine that a ton is going to happen between now and the next meeting. Well, that planted seeds, but we have not had the sort of necessary planning session between these meetings to make real development in the planning, which is to say, we've had perhaps another planning session call, but without there being youth leadership at the table, there can be only so much moving forward of it, because part of what we've talked about is that, right, this can't really take shape until youth are at the lead of it, that the whole idea is that it's going to be a youth leadership kind of space framework. So we just have to kind of build a time, have genuine outreach, and maybe I can also say that I think at the time of our last check-in call, I knew little about, and I don't think had individual expertise on what happened at the last JJCC meeting. And perhaps, Stephanie, were you there at the last JJCC? On the point of, or if anyone here happens to know, I don't know if Jill, maybe.
It's funny because I'm like trying to figure out, I've been to so many different meetings. I'm like, did I go to the last JJCC meeting?
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
Yeah, that resonates for sure. I mean, but really the point is whether any of us have any material updates on this youth advisory council concept. We talked about, like, let's go to our different spheres and talk about it.
Yeah, I can give a quick update.
Please.
So as of right now, there are a few youth leaders in the county that are interested in having some initial discussions about what this could potentially look like, having a youth leadership council, as well as having other events centered around criminal legal transformation and ensuring that it's a youth-driven process. So a couple of folks on the East County side, Taylor Sims with Lift Up Contra Costa, who is technically considered a young person, but would like to be involved in some of those conversations. And there's also a couple of youth members, I forget what they may be called, Pittsburgh in Action. I can't remember though. Also Richmond Revolution, they have 3 of their members that would like to participate in some of those conversations. Some folks from Rise. I'm still waiting on confirmation from A10 on whether they have the capacity to participate in any conversations. But as of right now, I'm still waiting on dates, but it looks like potentially like the 3rd week or the 2nd week of December, they may have some time available to meet. And so I can follow up with that. I don't know when our next meeting is. So potentially we may have more information by our next committee meeting, but there are some young folks that are very interested in carrying on with this conversation and moving some of the work forward.
Love it. Thank you for that update. And thank you for doing the work to, you and others perhaps, in doing the work to make sure that that word goes out and that the steps are there for outreach. I think that that's really encouraging to me to be hearing the names of Orgus, and the one that you mentioned in Richmond, I don't know specifically. So that's great too, that it's not, at least not that I know all the players, but even so, that's good to know that, okay, well, other groups too that aren't necessarily always the discussion are interested.
And FYI, Eddie Chacon, who is on the line today, he will be one of the folks participating in those discussions as well.
Terrific. So right, I think our next meeting would be December 10, if we were to have our regular scheduled 2nd Thursday CEF Community Engagement Funding Subcommittee meeting. And if that's true, perhaps the 7th, 8th, 9th or something like that could be one of those calls. It wouldn't be included in the agenda, the content of it, but it would be at least something that we could talk on, report back in this same sort of fashion, say, well, yeah, we had a call and was encouraging in these ways. So maybe, maybe not, but that's really great that right around that time, it seems like there could be, I mean, when I'm saying maybe not, perhaps the meeting that we're describing would happen just after the next CEF meeting, but if it can happen before, it'd be fantastic, so that we could incorporate it into what we're doing here and then say, okay, hearing that, we're going to move the ball forward before we lose track of things at the end of the year, and we're hitting the ground running in January, and it just keeps rolling. So, right, it's really encouraging, terrific, that we have the ability to plan to take action still in December, based on the work that you're talking about. Other feedback from folks? Okay, I'm hoping this is, I'm not sure that everyone on the call, although I think everyone here is familiar from a previous CEF meeting specifically. Just to say, knowing what we're talking about with this whole concept of the Youth Advisory Council, but I think contextually it probably has come through that we're talking about having a more long-term space, something like an advisory body, just as this racial justice oversight body is a structure, so to speak, in the county. There would be a different sort of space that would be youth-led and would have a youth-led agenda, is the concept, and just it's I'm holding off on saying in its infancy, the whole youth concept. But you know what I'm meaning is that we're very at the very beginning of what we're proposing, and then would ultimately be taken on and led by young leaders that Stephanie was just mentioning from those different orgs. I don't know if there's really more action to be taken in this moment other than to say we're going to endeavor to try to have that meeting before the next one, take the steps from that, the lessons that we learned from that information, and incorporate it so that we can move forward with this. Are expecting to have our December 10 meeting, but I'll just say, well, I don't think there's something to vote on in this moment. If others feel differently or have a proposal on the Youth Advisory Council now to have a vote, then we certainly could. Okay. Yeah. Marcus?
I was just going to say, I think that what will we be voting on to make that recommendation to the larger RJOB, or?
Right, at this point, I think it's probably premature for us to vote on something. I just didn't want to shut down our discussion without, I'm saying, is there something more for us to do than to hopefully have that youth-led discussion before December 10, and then we'll incorporate. But if there's nothing more, then I'm happy to jump to our next item on the agenda. Okay, let's do that then. We've gotten through most of the content, and so be it. I don't want to stretch things on if unnecessary, right? So that said, there's much to be done, I know, so I don't want to cut us short. Future meeting scheduling, we just talked about expectation that it would be December 10 and probably 3 to 5 as we have been, and via Zoom, barring some sort of miraculous intervention. I think that that's going to be the case, that we're doing it this way. So that's my very long way of saying December 10 at 3 to 5, right? On Zoom? I think so. I don't think we need to even vote on that item, and I haven't historically. And then announcements, adjourn until the next one. So let's talk on that. Anyone have something to announce that they want to bring forward to a group? Okay, right, everyone's like, no, I'm going to take 4:35. That'll be just fine. So hearing nothing in the moment, I appreciate everyone's time and what you've all done here. We will continue our work and meet up next time, December 10th, 3 o'clock. See you here. And thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, everyone.
Adios. Adios. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.